The chandelier light shimmered across polished marble floors, reflecting the quiet luxury of a place where everything whispered wealth. Designer displays glowed behind spotless glass. Soft piano music floated through the air. Guests moved slowly, confidently, people who clearly belonged. And then there was the man near the entrance. He stood calmly, dressed in a simple dark coat and worn boots, studying the room with quiet curiosity rather than entitlement. No entourage, no flashy watch, no attempt to impress anyone. Most people didn't even look at him twice, until he stepped toward one of the premium display sections. A sharply dressed saleswoman noticed immediately. Her smile appeared professional, precise, but it didn't reach her eyes. She scanned his clothes, his shoes, the way he carried himself. In a place built on appearances, she had already made her decision. He spoke politely, asking about one of the items on display. She tilted her head slightly, her voice lowering just enough to sound courteous while still carrying an edge. "Sir," she said, glancing briefly at his coat, "this section is extremely expensive." A couple nearby exchanged faint smiles. The man remained composed. He ran his fingers gently along the glass case, studying the craftsmanship with genuine interest. Not the behavior of someone trying to impress, but someone who truly appreciated what he saw. The woman folded her hands, posture stiffening. Then she delivered the sentence that would change the atmosphere of the entire room. "You can't afford this." For a brief moment, the music, the chatter, the movement, everything seemed to pause, and the man slowly lifted his eyes to meet hers. The showroom stretched like a cathedral of luxury, high ceilings, mirrored pillars, and glass displays arranged with museum precision. Every spotlight was deliberate, every reflection controlled. This was not just a place to shop, it was a place to be seen. Soft piano notes drifted through hidden speakers, blending with the low murmur of refined conversation. While dressed guests moved between displays with slow confidence, pausing to admire items that cost more than most people earned in a year. A man in a tailored suit adjusted his cufflinks, while a couple debated finishes and custom options. Nearby, an attendant offered sparkling water on a silver tray. Attention flowed naturally toward those who looked like they belonged, and away from those who didn't. The man in the dark coat stood quietly near the premium section, neither rushed nor hesitant. He examined the craftsmanship in silence, his expression thoughtful, almost appreciative, as if he admired the artistry more than the price tag. A security guard near the entrance watched him discreetly. Two staff members exchanged subtle glances. The saleswoman remained poised beside the display, her professional smile fixed in place, though her posture suggested guarded patience. She shifted her weight slightly, ready to redirect him if necessary. Across the room, a woman draped in designer silk leaned toward her companion and whispered something while glancing in his direction. The companion smirked. In a space defined by elegance and exclusivity, belonging was communicated without words, through fabric, posture, confidence, and assumption. Still, the man did not appear uncomfortable. He did not seem embarrassed. If anything, he seemed perfectly at ease. He studied the display one more time, then looked up calmly, ready to ask another question. He pointed toward a handcrafted piece inside the glass display, something elegant, understated, and unmistakably expensive. "May I ask about this one?" he said politely. The saleswoman's smile returned, perfectly measured, but her tone shifted into something more rehearsed than welcoming. "That item," she replied, "is part of our exclusive collection." She didn't open the case. Instead, she kept her hands clasped in front of her, as if creating an invisible barrier between him and the display. "It requires a private consultation and advance verification," she continued, her voice smooth but firm. The man nodded, listening attentively. "I understand," he said. "And the price?" A faint pause followed. "Not the kind used to check information, the kind used to evaluate a person." She inhaled lightly. "Sir," she said, lowering her voice, "pieces in this collection begin in the six-figure range." A couple browsing nearby slowed their steps. One man raised his eyebrows. The companion beside him hid a smile. The woman watched closely, waiting for the reaction she expected, the awkward laugh, the embarrassed nod, the quick retreat. But it didn't come. Instead, he studied the piece again, his expression thoughtful, almost appreciative. "As craftsmanship goes," he said calmly, "that seems worth understanding." The saleswoman's posture stiffened. This was not following the usual script. She shifted slightly closer to the display, maintaining control of the space. "I wouldn't want you to waste your time," she replied. Her words were gentle. Her meaning was not. Behind them, The piano continued its soft melody, but the air around the display had grown noticeably tighter, as if the room itself were waiting to see what would happen next. The tension did not arrive loudly. It spread quietly, like a change in temperature. A pair of guests lingering near a mirrored pillar slowed their conversation, their attention drifting toward the exchange. One tilted his head, pretending to admire a display while clearly listening. Another guest, draped in a tailored blazer, allowed a faint smirk to settle at the corner of his mouth. Across the room, whispers began, soft enough to remain polite, loud enough to be noticed. The security guard near the entrance shifted his stance, now watching more directly. He didn't move closer, but his attention sharpened, ready if the situation required intervention. Two junior staff members at the service desk exchanged quick glances. One raised an eyebrow as if to ask, "Should we step in?" The other subtly shook his head. The saleswoman appeared to have things under control. The man in the dark coat remained where he was, composed and unhurried. He wasn't pleading. He wasn't defensive. He simply stood there, studying the craftsmanship as though the growing scrutiny around him did not exist. The saleswoman's patience thinned beneath her professional exterior. She adjusted her posture, placing one hand lightly against the glass case, a territorial gesture disguised as casual poise. "Sir," she said, still maintaining a polished tone, "this collection is typically viewed by appointment." A quiet chuckle surfaced from somewhere behind them. Someone whispered, "He's in the wrong section." Another voice murmured, "These places attract everyone now." The piano continued its gentle melody, but the warmth in the room had cooled. Curiosity had turned into judgment, and judgment was quickly becoming entertainment. In a place devoted to refinement, respect was subtly being rationed, and everyone nearby seemed to be waiting for the man to realize he didn't belong. The man in the dark coat didn't flinch. He didn't shift nervously or glance around for approval. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate breath and returned his attention to the item in the glass display. His fingers lightly traced the edge of the case, not touching the craftsmanship but appreciating it as one might admire a work of art in a gallery. The room, already thick with tension, seemed to hold its collective breath. The whispers faded into silence as curiosity wrestled with disbelief. Everyone could sense that something was different about him, though no one yet knew what. The saleswoman straightened her back, forcing her professional composure. Her eyes, however, betrayed the slight crack of unease. "Sir," she began, "we normally require appointments for this collection. Perhaps another time would be more convenient." He smiled faintly, a calm, measured expression that carried neither arrogance nor apology. "I understand," he said in a quiet, even voice. "I appreciate your guidance. No argument. No confrontation, just quiet dignity." Then, almost imperceptibly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He glanced at it briefly, tapping a few keys. The staff and nearby guests did not notice at first. His calm was deliberate, almost hypnotic. A stillness in the storm that drew attention without demanding it. The faint smirk from the couple near the pillar faltered. The security guard's stance stiffened. Even the woman who had judged him now felt a subtle shift in the air, a momentary recognition that this was not the awkward scene she expected. And then came the moment that would leave the entire room frozen in anticipation. He pressed a single number on his phone, his eyes still calm, and waited. Seconds stretched, the room waiting for what would happen next. The stage was set. The reveal, the moment of truth, was about to unfold. The room seemed to pause. The soft piano melody, once background, now felt like a countdown. Every eye subtly shifted toward the man in the dark coat. Sensing that something unexpected was about to happen, he raised his phone slightly, speaking in a quiet tone that only the staff could hear. The words were simple, polite, and unassuming, yet they carried weight. The saleswoman stiffened, her polished smile faltering ever so slightly. Her fingers, previously resting lightly on the glass case, twitched with unease. Guests nearby exchanged subtle glances. A couple whispered, "Who is he?" Their curiosity had morphed into nervous anticipation. The security guard adjusted his stance, straightening, sensing that the situation was no longer ordinary. For the first time, the woman who had made the judgmental comment felt the room tilt away from her. Her confidence, so carefully constructed, wavered. She had expected embarrassment or hesitation, maybe a retreat. Instead, the calm authority of the man in front of her was impossible to ignore. He glanced briefly around the room, letting his gaze sweep over every guest, every staff member. It wasn't intimidation, it was presence. Every subtle movement he made, the way he lowered his phone, The tilt of his head amplified the tension, making it impossible for anyone to look away. Then he spoke into the phone again, just a few quiet words. The air changed. A subtle ripple passed through the staff, and the saleswoman's poised exterior cracked ever so slightly. She exchanged a brief look with the manager nearby, a silent signal of recognition. Seconds felt like minutes. Every guest shifted, some leaning forward, others frozen mid-step. Something was happening, and everyone in the room instinctively knew it would change everything. In that moment, the calm man in the dark coat wasn't just a visitor, he was about to rewrite the rules of the room. The reveal was imminent. The manager appeared suddenly, moving briskly across the showroom floor. His expression shifted from casual attention to wide-eyed recognition as he reached the display. The staff straightened instantly, their composed facades replaced by subtle awe. The saleswoman's confident posture faltered completely. Her eyes widened as she realized the truth. The man she had dismissed moments ago was no ordinary customer. Her polite words, her judgmental glance, the very sentence she had spoken, "You can't afford this," now hung heavy in the air. Guests who had been quietly observing began to whisper. Heads turned. Phones were raised, capturing the silent shock that spread through the room. A few gasps escaped lips as the weight of recognition settled in. The man in the dark coat, calm, collected, completely unshaken, lifted his gaze to meet hers. He didn't smirk, nor did he flaunt his status. He simply smiled gently, as if to say it's not about proving anything, but about respect. The staff and nearby guests could barely process what was happening. The manager approached, voice low, apologetic. "Sir, we didn't realize it was you." The words echoed softly, but their impact reverberated through the room. The woman who had judged him just moments earlier stood frozen. Her confidence, once unshakable, had collapsed into disbelief. Color drained from her face. Her earlier words felt painfully out of place in the sudden silence that followed. Every eye in the showroom turned to watch. The whispers grew louder, but now filled with awe rather than judgment. The atmosphere had shifted completely. What had begun as casual dismissal had transformed into collective astonishment. In an instant, the balance of power had changed. The man in the dark coat, unassuming and composed, had reminded everyone in the room of a simple truth: appearances can be deceiving, and respect is earned through character, not assumptions. The stage was set for the final moment, the human reaction that would seal the story. The room had gone silent, the kind of silence that feels heavier than any noise. Every guest, every staff member, even the security guard, now understood that the man in the dark coat was not who they thought he was. Whispers began cautiously. Like a ripple across still water, the woman who had mocked him just minutes earlier looked down, unable to meet his eyes. Her lips parted slightly as if searching for words, but none came. The confidence she had worn like armor melted away under the weight of recognition. Guests shifted in their seats, murmuring quietly to one another. Some pointed discreetly, others exchanged looks of astonishment. Everyone was processing the sudden reversal. The man they had assumed was ordinary, even inferior, was in fact extraordinary. The staff, once rigid in their professionalism, now moved with renewed respect. The saleswoman stepped back from the glass case, her posture straight but hesitant, as if unsure whether to apologize or simply remain in awe. Junior employees glanced at one another, whispering softly about what had just happened, their earlier judgment replaced by humility. Even the security guard relaxed slightly, though his eyes remained alert, as if confirming that the situation had shifted entirely in favor of the quiet authority before him, and the man himself remained calm. He didn't raise his voice, didn't demand acknowledgement. His composure only heightened the effect, a quiet power that commanded attention without confrontation. A guest finally broke the silence with a single whispered question. "Is that?" The recognition spread like wildfire. The room buzzed quietly but intensely. Everyone had witnessed the moment when assumptions were shattered, and the social hierarchy of the space had flipped in an instant. The woman's face went pale, her earlier words now echoing in her mind. The room had been reminded of a timeless truth. Judging someone by appearance alone can be the gravest mistake of all. In that instant, the human reaction, the mix of shock, humility, and awe, became the beating heart of the story. After the initial shockwave settled, the room still hummed quietly with tension. Guests whispered to one another, staff straightened nervously, and the woman who had mocked him remained frozen, her face pale and eyes wide. The air was thick with realization this wasn't just a reversal of fortune, it was a lesson in humility. The man in the dark coat, however, did something unexpected. Instead of asserting dominance or gloating over the moment, he smiled gently. His calm, warm expression shifted the energy in the room from tension to reflection. There was no arrogance in his demeanor, only a quiet, commanding presence that demanded respect without demanding attention. He spoke softly, addressing the room but not pointing fingers. "Respect shouldn't depend on a price tag," he said. Every word carried weight. The saleswoman's shoulders relaxed slightly, her earlier pride replaced by a tentative smile. Even the guests, who had been on the edge of judgment or ridicule, felt the shift. They realized that what they had witnessed was not simply about money or status. It was about character. The woman who had mocked him glanced down at her hands, shame mixing with awe. She had expected embarrassment from him, not this calm dignity. She had expected retaliation, not this lesson in humility delivered silently and powerfully. Nearby staff whispered quietly, inspired by the way he handled the situation. One young employee, previously hesitant and unsure, stood a little taller, realizing that true respect was earned through actions and integrity, not appearance or assumptions. In that moment, the room had transformed. It was no longer just a showroom, it had become a classroom, a place where everyone present had learned something profound about human behavior. The simple act of calm composure, paired with quiet authority, had made a lasting impression. The emotional peak was clear humility, kindness, and presence outweigh arrogance, wealth, or judgment every time. After the room had absorbed the weight of the revelation, the man in the dark coat did something that transformed the moment from shock to inspiration. He didn't raise his voice, demand apologies, or flaunt his status. Instead, he acted with quiet generosity that left everyone in awe. He looked around at the staff, the saleswoman, junior employees, and attendants who had been polite but hesitant moments ago. With a small, deliberate gesture, he signaled them over. One by one, they approached, unsure of what to expect. "Thank you," he said, his voice calm but sincere. "Your work matters. You make this place what it is." A few staff members blinked in surprise. Compliments were rare in this world of luxury, where money often spoke louder than words. But this was different. Genuine recognition that honored effort, skill, and dedication rather than appearance or title. He gestured toward one junior employee, a young woman who had earlier hesitated in judgment. "You handled yourself with professionalism," he said softly. "Keep it up." Her eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Around them, the staff began to exchange smiles, realizing that humility and kindness could inspire more than authority ever could. Then, he moved to the display that had sparked the entire moment. With quiet decisiveness, he purchased the items he had inquired about, not for display, not for prestige, but simply because he appreciated the craftsmanship and the people behind it. Guests watched in silence, many pulling out phones to capture the moment, some whispering to one another about the humility and generosity they had just witnessed. The woman who had mocked him before could only watch, her earlier arrogance replaced with a silent lesson learned. The atmosphere in the room had shifted entirely from judgment to admiration, from dismissal to respect. In that instant, the story became bigger than wealth or status. It became a testament to character, humility, and the quiet power of treating others with dignity. The moment had passed, but its effects lingered in the room like a subtle vibration. Guests who had once whispered judgments now spoke in hushed admiration. Staff who had been tense and cautious moments ago moved with newfound confidence, smiles replacing polite stiffness. Even the security guard, who had been alert and suspicious, now relaxed, nodding discreetly to colleagues. The woman who had mocked him before remained near the display, her face still pale, but her eyes carried something new, understanding. She had expected embarrassment, confrontation, maybe even outrage. Instead, she had witnessed calm authority, humility, and generosity. The weight of her earlier words settled on her conscience, a quiet lesson in respect. Other guests began to approach the staff, asking questions about the man who had handled the situation with such dignity. "Who is he?" someone whispered, while another nodded appreciatively, remarking on the quiet power of humility. The story of the encounter spread like wildfire in the room, carried by murmurs and subtle glances. Even the staff began to reflect on their own behavior. They realized how easy it had been to make assumptions based on appearances, and how transformative it could be to treat everyone with courtesy, regardless of status. A young employee, inspired by the moment, whispered to a colleague, "I want to remember this. I want to be like that, calm, respectful, generous." The atmosphere of the showroom had shifted completely. What had begun as a routine encounter over a display of luxury became a lesson in human character. Guests left the room not just impressed by wealth or status, but moved by the grace, humility, and quiet power of the man who had walked in with nothing but calm confidence. By the time the man departed, the room felt changed. Conversations carried a new tone of respect, and the story, simple yet profound, would linger in the minds of everyone present long after the doors closed. By the time the man in the dark coat walked out, the room had been transformed, not by money, not by status, but by character. What had started as a small moment of judgment, "You can't afford this," had become a lesson in humility, respect, and quiet power. The staff who had been polite out of duty now smiled with genuine pride. Guests who had whispered assumptions were now silent, reflecting on their own judgments. Even the woman who had mocked him earlier seemed different, her face pale at first, but now thoughtful, almost humbled. She had seen firsthand that appearances can deceive, that assumptions are dangerous, and that true respect is earned through action, not attire. The man didn't need to flaunt his wealth or demand recognition. He didn't need to prove himself. His composure, kindness, and calm authority spoke louder than any display of money or status ever could. That quiet power, the ability to command respect without confrontation, was the real lesson. This is what makes moments like these viral. They resonate universally. Everyone has judged someone by appearance at some point. Everyone has underestimated another, and everyone can relate to the shock and awe of witnessing humility and dignity in action. Viral closing hooks. Respect isn't about wealth, it's about character. Share this if you agree. True power isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet, calm, and kind. She judged him by his clothes and learned the hardest lesson of her life. Share to remind others. Moments like these linger because they touch something deeper, our understanding of human behavior, of humility, and of the respect we often take for granted. And that is why this story isn't just watched, it's shared, remembered, and talked about. The lesson is simple, yet profound, eh? Judging someone too quickly can cost you far more than you think. Even after the story concluded, the impact didn't end. This moment wasn't just about a single interaction. It became a ripple that spread far beyond the showroom walls. Every guest, every staff member, and even bystanders who overheard the tale carried a lesson. Humility and respect resonate deeper than money or status. The woman who had mocked him didn't speak, but her expression said it all. She had witnessed firsthand the power of calm dignity and generosity. She had learned that appearances can be deceiving, that quick judgments often backfire, and that the strongest influence comes from character, not arrogance. Nearby staff exchanged quiet smiles, inspired to approach every customer with renewed kindness and patience. Guests left with a story they couldn't wait to share, a narrative more compelling than any luxury item on display. This is the kind of moment that begs to be shared online, not for gossip, but as a reminder of what really matters. Closing share lines to social triggers. Tag someone who needs to see this lesson in humility. Share if you believe respect costs nothing, but means everything. Remember, judging someone too quickly can be the biggest mistake of your life. Moments like this aren't just stories, they're lessons, ready to inspire anyone who sees them. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do connect with me for more content. And don't forget to subscribe my channel. Bye bye.